Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're going to be talking about tech planning. And first question we have for you is, when you go on a trip and you don't know the way, what do you take?
Yes.
GPS. And so why do you do that? Why do you take a GPS?
So that you know how to get to where you're going.
So you know how to get there. Well, the same thing is true with a tech plan. Tech plans are blueprints that help the school get to where they want to go with regard to technology. A couple sessions ago, we talked about vision and what we were thinking about. And the tech plan takes that vision and makes it potentially a reality. With that said, of course, a goal without a plan is just a dream. And so therefore, it's vital that we understand those kinds of things. Of course, we are guided by the National Educational Technology Standards for Administrators, and the educational administrators engage in an ongoing process to develop, implement, and communicate technology-infused strategic plans that are aligned with a shared vision. And so the tech plan becomes a vital part in that technology-ready school administrators' work. When we start to think about the planning process, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be detailing the planning process. Before I start that, have any of you participated in technology planning? I thought that might be the case.
In my own departments back home, I implemented my own 5-year plan.
Okay,
And that was independent of the school's plan.
okay. And the school had a plan?
And no.
What we want to do is we want, of course, to make sure that people understand that process. And many of you are not in schools yet. And so therefore, some of the things that you might want to realize is in Ohio, every school must have a technology plan. If they do not have a technology plan, they are not going to qualify for E-rate funds. So they want to qualify, they receive those funds if they have a technology plan, and all schools do. They have those plans in place so that they are making good decisions. It guides decisions. It helps in the implementation. It tells individuals who's responsible for what actions, and those are some of the reasons. Overall, it helps with funding decisions as we decide how we're going to do that. The first step is to empower a team. You want to identify 15 to 25 individuals who will be willing and able and perhaps knowledgeable in order to participate. And one of the things that I would like to say is that after you've been through this course, I'm hoping that if an opportunity comes to you to be on a technology planning committee, that you jump at it, because it will be a worthwhile experience for you. Okay? So we have to empower a team. And in the typical school, the superintendent is going to start that process. There's going to be conversation on how we're going to select these individuals. And from a experiential point of view, it is good to have individuals who want to be on the team. But there are also benefits to have individuals who you feel would have good information and will be great assets to a team, and you need to ask them to participate as well. So you empower that team and select that team. The second step is to prepare the team. Get the team ready to do the work of creation of a tech plan. And some of the things that can be done to prepare the team for planning is, first of all, you gotta ask yourself who, what, when, where, why of existing resources. Do we have a tech plan? If so, where is it? So you have to ask those questions. Obviously, this work is going to be done by teams. And so giving them a chance to review tech plans, to review resources, to look at those kinds of things, very, very worthwhile. Perhaps even sending them to conferences to get them aware. Very worthwhile to take a look at and tour schools in the district as well as going to schools outside of the district. When I was superintendent, we decided that one particular school system was far and above many other school systems. And so therefore we sent a team up there to look at what they were doing and how they were implementing. We came back with lots of good ideas that we could put into our technology plan. So that's always a worthwhile time. So you have to prepare the team to do the work. This third step is to review data. Review data. And when I say review data, you have to look at what current skills do staff members have? What current skills do students have? What are the expectations of the community with regard to technology? And there's a number of ways that you can collect this data. Quicksurveys.com is one way. Poll Everywhere is another manner in which you can collect information. But you have to collect that data and you have to look at that data. That team's got to look at that data. Part of that examination is what kind of equipment do we have? What's our repair look like on that equipment? Are there upgrades necessary? So taking a look at all that kind of information starts to prepare the team to do the work. And the work is within the needs assessment and the development of the plan. Detailing exactly what your goal is, taking a look at who's going to be responsible for accomplishing it, taking a look at the individuals that will be supportive, the resources that you need, time, money to implement. How are you going to assess this? How are you going to examine it to see if it's done or not done? I really like this blueprint right here, and I'm going to show you an example of one in reality, and how that school used a similar process to create their technology plan. So, creating a needs assessment. Now, what do we need? For example, if the school wants students to use Google Docs, for example, we have to make sure that the staff knows how to use Google Docs. And then after the staff, we then have to have sessions to train students on how to use those types of things. And those would be some of the steps that we would be putting together. Our goal would be to use Google Docs as a tool in learning. So that's just one example of the development. This is one that is complete. Although this really talks about reading, you still get the ideas. To start with, we start off with actions, what we want to accomplish, and or the goal, if you will, and how it's going to be accomplished. What's going to happen? What are we going to see in order for that to take place? Who's going to be responsible? Take a side note here for a minute and go back in time. And when our school was just in the beginnings of implementing, we did not have the infrastructure in place in order to have a technology program. And therefore, we had to have fiber optic wires that were brought in. Of course, we had to purchase equipment. We had to do a variety of things. And much of that fell on my shoulders to make sure that those things got accomplished. Of course, we were using consultants. We were using other people to actually install that wire and things. So anyway, who's going to be responsible for getting it accomplished? I would say that, once again, teachers, if we are talking about the implementation of a certain activity that we want students to know, the teacher is needing to be responsible for that. And of course, in your curriculum class, you learn about spiralness, and so we have to think about how that plays on various grade levels as we implement. The resources, as we said, what do you need? What do you need? You're going to need equipment. You're going to need the infrastructure. You're going to need the software. Those are generally what you're going to be needing. As you write your goals more specifically, or as the goals are written more specifically, then they become just that, very much more specific in nature. Very important. What's the target date? When is it starting, and when will we see it finished? Very important to get tied in on that and have it written down. And how are we going to evaluate it? What's our evidence? What's our evidence? If we want students to use Blackboard, for an example, and we in graduate education did this, we started introducing, before courses were available, we started introducing e-lessons using Blackboard. And so students became more familiar with it as time went on. And so that's kind of a more current example. And I would say today, 85% or higher, although we haven't done a survey to check this, we could, I would say that 85% or higher of our students know how to use Blackboard fairly proficiently. And that is a quick turnaround from just 2 years ago. So having that written down, having that on paper, and of course realizing who's going to be responsible for delivering of those lessons, creation of those lessons, etc. Okay. So then we get into executing the plan. You have it written down. You have those action plans written. Now you have to execute. There has to be action. And of course, action is the most important part. Writing is one thing, doing it is quite the next. Very important is to execute the plan. And then finally, at the conclusion, you evaluate. You use a survey, you use some means to find out whether or not that part of the plan has been implemented or not. Okay, so that's a quick overview of technology planning and the steps that you go through in order to have a technology plan in place. In today's world, back in the day, we did all this in committee work, face to face. We sat around a table and we talked about it. If I were doing it in schools today, I would use Google Docs. I would have very few meetings. I would allow individuals to add and subtract information as they saw fit using that mechanism. Therefore, less need for face-to-face interactions. I think that would be a very, very worthwhile way to do that type of work. Okay, I'm going to show you a technology plan. This is Melville School District. And one of the assignments you're going to be doing is you're going to be evaluating or reviewing a tech plan. And so therefore, we're gonna be doing that right here with this plan a little bit, okay? So you're gonna be responding to questions. And is this existing plan functional or stagnant? We don't know. We aren't in the school system. Therefore, we aren't certain if it is or isn't. If we were in the system, we would know whether it is or isn't. I've had students in the class, I say, well, we're going to do a technology review of your tech plan. And they look at me as a deer would look at headlights. I've been teaching in the school system 10 years and nobody's talked to me about a tech plan. Well, guess what? That's a stagnant plan. And in the meantime, so discouraging because those individuals were teachers, and after they investigated the plan, what they find out? Teachers were responsible for about 60% of implementation of the plan. Didn't even know that they were that integral in it. So if you are working with a plan, and I'll talk about this after we get done with the presentation and answer questions at that point, you'll make a decision whether it is actually a functional plan or whether it's stagnant, okay? And if it's not one that you know about, you just have to say, I don't know, because I don't teach in the school system. Okay, so this plan is 58 pages, and 58 pages sounds like a huge document. It is. However, you're talking about a fair-sized school district, K through 12, and so therefore it is going to take a little bit of writing in order for them to present their plan. The table of contents here, and you're going to see Technology Committee. What should we be looking for when we see those individuals' names and their titles? What should we be looking for? What do you think, Ethan?
Just to see how they're part of that plan, like how they're going to contribute to the overall plan.
Okay. Other ideas, Christopher?
Where in the district they're at?
Okay, where they're,
What schools they belong to?
what schools they belong to. You know, back to, we have to have an inclusive group. You know, if we had 4 schools, we had 2 elementaries, a middle school and a high school, we had no representation at the middle school, guess what? Not inclusive. Not inclusive. Who else should perhaps be included on this committee?
The teachers.
Teachers, absolutely. Got to have teachers involved, definitely. Too often, I hear of stories when students have done a review that the tech coordinator wrote this themselves because they wanted to get it done fast and they had to get it ready by such and such a time to qualify for their E-rate dollars. No buy-in. There's not going to be any buy-in. So you need to have buy-in. Other ideas? Cassandra?
Would student participation be a good idea?
Yes, student participation. And I'm going to suggest 2 groups. You know, I don't know that an elementary student ought to be in there. Maybe a really mature one, I wouldn't rule them out. However, a student who just graduated and went on to college or went into the workforce, wow, they're going to give lots of good insight. Lots of good insight. I would think that a high school student could also be a valuable component within the group. Other ideas?
Probably a parent or 2.
Parents, yes.
Stakeholders.
Yes. As many stakeholder groups as possible. I think you get the idea now of inclusion. So let's see how this was made up. You can see here that the committee was comprised of students, staff, parents, school board members, and community members from within the district. They had 25 members. They began working on it in conjunction with their comprehensive school improvement plan. Something else I needed to point out. When working on a tech plan, it can't be a sole item all by itself out there in left field. You have to think about curriculum implementation, you have to think about school improvement, continuous improvement, maybe you have a strategic plan. All these have to be coordinated. And the technology plan is a part of the district operation. Okay, now, so if we were answering the question, is this an inclusive group? Kara?
I would say yes.
Absolutely. You know, almost everything that we talked about, even added one, community members to the group. So therefore, I would say, contend, that this is was an inclusive group. Back up here for a moment. In here, they just give an overview of their technology plan, and they talk about their mission statement. So another thing you have to think about is vision and mission. Is there a vision for technology in the district? Is there a mission? And of course, we want to know those kinds of things. Since they're listed there, we're going to see. Yes, they have their mission statement written, and they also bring in the overall learning goals. Something else I probably want to point out, technology shouldn't be just an add-on. We don't do technology things to do technology things. We do technology to advance and improve learning. It's supportive of learning, not the learning in and of itself. Now granted, if we are teaching a specific task, we have to teach the task first, perhaps, but then we always want to be thinking, how are we going to use this task to advance learning? That's key. Current status. Current status. Data. If we have one computer for every 75 students, are we going to be able to advance the technology initiative under those conditions? No. So we have to have some data. Are we a bring your own device school? Are we, do we have the software necessary for the tasks that we want teachers and students to use? So, data. You see their data analysis sources. So they have how they are using that data to analyze, to create their needs assessment. Okay, I'm going to jump down here and show you Student Learning Action Plan. Hope I do that. It's on page 14. Here they take a look at the various pieces of data that were examined. They say whether it was a strength or a weakness, what the results were, and the implications regarding technology. So a very nice matrix that analyzes that data for learning, with specific pieces collected to assist in that process. And here's their action plan. Some of the things that you want to have in an action plan, we've already mentioned, but we want to say it again. You know, what are our strategies? What are our steps? What's our goal? What resources do we need? what is our funding source? Who's gonna be responsible to make sure this happens? What's the target date? By the way, that plan was written in 2012, and I noticed that their target dates are 2015. I'm going to go on record to say that this district is back in the examination of data and the examination of information to create the next one that will go from, and by the way, plans are usually 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years. And I don't know if this, I got a feeling this is a 3-year plan, because you see that 2015. And then the evidence for completion. Tell me some of your reactions to that chart and that information. Go ahead.
It was too much.
It's too much?
Yes, too complicated.
Okay. I would
It's
contend,
very thorough.
I would contend that after you worked with it, you know, at first blush, lots, you know, probably overwhelming at first blush. But if you're in that school system and you are working there, and if you've been a part of creation of this, you will find that it's not necessarily all that complex. It is very detailed and very step-by-step oriented and laid out. That GPS is getting us right there where we want for that particular goal. Kara, give me your...
I was thinking the same thing as Christopher. I feel like it's extremely detailed and a little bit overwhelming.
Okay. But once again, it's your first blush at it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Those are the steps. And so what you're going to be looking for in your review of tech plan is, do they have things laid out like this? Or not? Are there things missing? If you don't have the funding piece in there, you don't know what it's going to cost. If you don't have identified who's responsible, then guess what? Nobody's going to be responsible. All of which aren't good things. And this just goes on. Here we talk about, now they're examining teacher preparation, staff development, if you will. And they have the various pieces of survey of staff and what they're looking for, and then they detail how they're going to take the staff from where they are to where they want them to be. Questions about, yes, go ahead.
I feel like it almost has to be this detailed if you're trying to prove that technology is relevant in the classroom.
Yes, it has to, if you, you know, if you are using your GPS and it goes out halfway, you better have a backup plan. If you're like me, I'm old school, I take a paper with me. Of course, I have a map in the glove compartment that I never get out, but I always have the steps written out, so when that signal goes bluey, and it will and does, I'm semi-prepared for it to get me through until the signal shows back up. So you're right. It has to be this detail. If we are truly wanting to implement technology and make improvements and strengthen student learning, it has to be this detail. Or you won't get there. You will not get there. And granted, for you folks, for you who are looking at this for the first time and never having thought through these kinds of things, you're going, oh my goodness. You know, it is overwhelming. But once again, if you are in that school system and it's been explained to you and you know what your role is, then it makes it a little bit more manageable, to say the least. Go ahead, Karen.
I'm just thinking, so do these plans, like, do they, is it comprehensive as far as like, they're talking about any technology, so in the classroom, in specific computer classes, in any type of flipped classroom situations, you know, any kind of handheld, if they're including all of that?
You know, the way I'm gonna respond to that is it's going to depend on the school district and how they want to approach it. Your point is this: if this school system wants to bring in mobile learning, then they have to address it in the plan. If they are going to have the equipment provided for the students, and some districts do give students their tablets that are already loaded with all the software and things, then it should detail that in the plan. So it's going to depend on and when you look, you know, this is an exemplary plan in my opinion. It hits all the key components. You're going to find when you review maybe the one you're going to be looking at, it's not going to have some of these things. It's not going to use data. Big mistake. So let me see, you arrived at, you're doing this for teachers, but you have nothing to support it? You don't know why you're doing that? That's a big, and that's a major omission that you'll find in lots of plans. They are not data-driven, so to speak. They've been written without data. So, you're going to be filling out this, and of course you can find an electronic one in Blackboard, and you will also find an exemplary paper. So you're doing two things. You're answering the questions. I think it's on page 25. There are like 8 questions. You can kind of walk through some of those questions, and you are responding based on the plan that you're looking at. You are going to be responding to each one of these. I think the plan that you will be looking at, what they did was they took this and they made the cell a certain color to identify that that's where they were evaluating the plan. I'll answer your questions after we get done here. A few more things. So, many school systems already have tech plans in place. That was a creation of a tech plan. You might find yourself being hired into a school system, and you might want to take a look at that plan to examine it, okay? And so, one of the things we address in the chapter is the evaluation of plans. Now, we've already kind of done that, but within that, you can do that separately. You can do that separately. So, if you are a aspiring principal, you take over a school, there's a tech plan in place, and you want to figure out how well that plan is being implemented, you're going to want to start at this step rather than the writing step. You want to evaluate the plan. And by that, you'll be looking at defining the various components. You are going to be looking at how those components are measured. You're going to evaluate them, and then you're going to manage them. We'll give you a chance here in a minute to ask questions, okay?